The twin suns of Aloranine shone brightly over the open market. Casting long golden shadows across the dusty streets, vendors shouted prices. Strange alien animals called out from cages, and the air smelled of spice and metal. In the middle of it all stood Lyra. Trying not to hear the whispers around her, they were not quiet. Her own people rarely were, especially when it came to her, too big for breeding. One female hissed to another, pretending to look at fruit but keeping her eyes on Lyra. She never have a mate. A male chuckled, shaking his head. She's not even worth a trade. Someone else added, voice dripping with mockery. Every word hit Lyra like a stone. She kept her head down, her hands tightening around the small basket she carried. Her heart had grown used to these words over the years, but they still burned. Like fresh wounds reopening, she told herself to focus on her errands, to ignore them. Yet her eyes wandered across the market stand. Then she froze among the sea of alien faces. There was one that didn't belong. A human. He stood tall, broad-shouldered, with tan skin and a dark beard. His clothing was strange black leather mixed with metal plates. His eyes scanned the market like someone seeing it for the first time, but when they landed on her, they didn't move away. Lyra felt her stomach twist. Humans were rare here. She had seen a few before: traders, mercenaries, explorers, but none had ever looked at her like this. It wasn't disgust, it wasn't pity, it was curiosity. She quickly looked away, heat rising in her cheeks. No, she thought. He's probably staring for the same reason everyone else does. Her people had always told her she was different tanned, not in a way to be proud of. She was taller, her build stronger than most females, her features sharper, her skin a deeper crimson than was considered attractive for her kind. These differences had made her an outcast since she was young. She moved to another stall, hoping the humans' eyes would find something else to rest on. But as she reached for a piece of dried meat, shadow fell over her hand. She looked up. The human was standing right there. His presence was solid, grounding. His eyes strange and warm at hers, and for a heartbeat, the noise of the market faded away. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice deep and calm. Lyra blinked, certain she had misheard. "What?" "I said," he repeated slowly, as if making sure she understood. "You're beautiful." Her chest tightened. The words didn't feel real. No one had ever said that to her, not even as a joke, and from a human of all beings. It made no sense. She stepped back, shaking her head. You don't know what you're saying," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. He tilted his head, studying her face like he was trying to read a language only he could see. "I know exactly what I'm saying," he replied. His tone carried no mockery, no hidden meaning, just honesty around them. The market seemed to pause. She could feel the eyes of her people burning into her back, their whispers rising again, sharper, uglier than before. "She's fooling him," someone spat. "He'll see soon enough," another sneered. Lyra's throat went dry. She had been insulted in public before, but never with a human standing in front of her like this. She wanted to run, to disappear, but his gaze held her in place. I have to go," she said quickly, turning away before he could speak again. Her steps were fast, her basket clutched tight against her chest. She didn't dare look back, afraid of what she might see: mockery, pity, or worse, truth. But even as she wove through the crowd, his voice followed her in her mind. "You're beautiful." She told herself it was nothing, just a stranger's words, a meaningless moment she would forget by tomorrow. But deep down, under the years of hurt and rejection, something small and stubborn began to stir, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She didn't know it yet, but this was not the last time she would see the human, and the next time. His words would change far more than her day. They would change her life. Lyra thought about the human's words all night. She lay in her small, dimly lit room above the workshop where she worked. Staring at the cracked ceiling, the words kept replaying in her mind like an echo she couldn't silence. "You're beautiful." She hated that they affected her so much. Hated that a single human's voice could make her chest feel warm the next day. She told herself she wouldn't go near the market. She had no reason to. She would stay in the workshop. Clean the tools, finish her repairs, and avoid all unnecessary interactions. But as the hours passed, she found her feet moving toward the market anyway. It was busy again. Alien voices mixing with the hum of hovering cargo pods and the calls of street vendors. She moved between stalls, pretending to be interested in the goods. Her eyes scanned the crowd, not for the human, she told herself, but for a part she needed for her work. And then she saw him. He was standing near the fabric vendor, talking with the shopkeeper. His presence was impossible to ignore. The human looked like he belonged to a different world entirely. His posture was confident yet relaxed, his movements unhurried. And then, as if sensing her, he turned his head. Their eyes met. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. His expression changed slightly, flicker of recognition, a hint of a smile, and before she could turn away, he was walking toward her. "I was hoping to see you again," he said, stopping just a step away from her. His voice was steady. And his eyes didn't wander over her like most did, they stayed on her face. "You shouldn't say things like you did yesterday," she replied, her tone guarded. "It causes problems." "Problems," he repeated, tilting his head, telling someone their beautiful causes problems here. "For me, yes," she said sharply. "My people don't see me the way you do." He studied her for a moment. "Then maybe your people need to see differently." His words made her chest feel tight again, and she quickly looked away. But he wasn't done. "My name's Kale," he said. "I'm a trader. Sometimes a mechanic when my ship decides to break down in the middle of nowhere." She hesitated, then gave her name softly. "Lyra, Lyra," he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "That's a strong name." She felt heat in her cheeks again. It had been years since anyone spoke to her without pity or mockery. They stood there in the noise of the market, a strange bubble of quiet between them. Then a shout broke it too. Alien males arguing over a crate of goods. The argument turned into a shove, and the shove into a fight. The crowd rippled with movement, pushing people aside before Lyra could step back. Someone stumbled into her, nearly knocking her over. She gasped, clutching her side in pain as her basket fell to the ground. Kale was there instantly, catching her by the arm. "Are you all right?" She nodded, even though her ribs ached. He bent down, picked up her basket, and looked at her with concern. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," she muttered. But he didn't seem convinced. "Let me help," he said firmly, steering her out of the busy path and into the shade of a nearby wall. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small human medkit. The sight of it startled Hirsch. She had never seen one in person before. "This will sting a bit," he warned, applying a clear gel to the bruise on her side. His hands were steady, his touch gentle. She couldn't help but notice the way he worked. Not rough, just careful. No one had ever touched her like that before. When he finished, he looked at her and smiled. "There, better." Lyra stepped back, her heart beating faster than she liked. She didn't know what this human wanted, but one thing was clear: he didn't treat her like the others. He didn't look at her as a burden or a joke. She wanted to tell him to stay away, to protect herself from whatever this was. But instead, she found herself asking quietly, "Why did you say that to me?" "Say what?" he asked, though she could tell he knew that I was beautiful. He shrugged slightly. "Because you are." The words landed softer this time, but no less powerful. She didn't know it yet, but they were already changing something deep inside her. In the distance, the market noise continued as if nothing had happened. But for Lyra, the world felt different. She didn't notice the group of her people watching from across the stalls. Whispering among themselves, their eyes were sharp, their expressions full of warning. Whatever was happening between her and this human, it was not going unnoticed. Lyra tried to avoid the market for the next 2 days. She told herself she was too busy with repairs in the workshop. Told herself she didn't want to see the human again. But the truth was more complicated. She was afraid of what her people might say, afraid of what she might feel if Kale spoke to her again. The whispers had already grown louder since that day. Everywhere she went, she could feel eyes on her. The older women gave her sharp, warning glances. The younger males smirked as if waiting for her to make a mistake. But fate didn't care about her plans. It happened on the 4th day. The skies above Valor9 were dark with the hint of Reyna. Rare was walking home from a delivery when she heard shouting in the distance. She turned a corner and saw a small crowd gathered around 2 figures. One of them was Kale. The other was a towering alien male with pale green skin, a local enforcer known for starting fights when bored. He had Kale backed against a wall, his voice booming as he accused him of cheating in a trade. "I told you." Kale said, calm but firm, "Your shipment was short." "I'm not paying full price for missing goods," the enforcer snarled, raising a heavy metal rod. The crowd leaned in, eager for a show. Before Lyra could stop herself, she pushed through. The onlookers, "Stop." She shouted, her voice carried more force than she expected. The enforcer turned, his eyes narrowing at her. "Stay out of this, Lyra," he growled. "This is between me and the human." Kale's eyes flicked to her, surprise and something else relief passing across his face. Lyra stepped forward. "If you hit him, you'll regret it," she said, her voice steady. She didn't know where the courage came from. But she held the enforcer's gaze. The male hesitated, muttered something under his breath, and finally lowered the rod. "Not worth my time," he spat before shoving past her. The crowd groaned in disappointment and began to scatter. Kale straightened, brushing dust off his jacket. "Thanks," he said, his tone lighter than the situation deserved. "I didn't think you'd be my rescue." She crossed her arms. "You're welcome," she said flatly. But there was a hint of a smile she couldn't hide. They walked away from the busy street, Kale keeping pace beside her. "I think you just saved me from a broken arm or worse," he said. "Oh. You don't owe me anything," she replied. "I only stepped in because I knew he'd go too far." Still, she noticed the way he looked at her, not with the smugness of someone who thought he was charming, but with genuine appreciation. It unsettled her in a way that wasn't entirely unpleasant. When they reached a quieter street, Kale slowed. "You seem different today," he said. "Different how?" "Less guarded," he said with a small smile. "Like maybe you don't completely hate me anymore." She scoffed. "I never hated you. I just don't understand you." "What's there to understand?" he asked. "I say what I mean, and I meant it when I called you beautiful." Her heart skipped again at the word, and she quickly changed the subject. "You're far from home, Kale. Why are you here?" His expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Trade routes, mostly, but I also go where I'm needed. Sometimes that means fixing engines. Sometimes it means delivering supplies to colonies. And sometimes," he glanced at her, "it means helping someone who doesn't realize they need help." She stopped walking. "And you think that's me?" "I know it is," he said quietly. His confidence unsettled her. But before she could respond, a sudden clap of thunder rolled. Overhead, fat raindrops began to fall, splashing against the dusty street. People hurried to find shelter. Kale held out a hand toward her. "Come on, before we both get soaked." She hesitated, then took it. His hand was warm, his grip steady. He led her to a small metal awning attached to a closed shop. The rain came, harder now, rattling against the roof. For a moment, they stood in silence, listening to the storm. Lyra realized she was closer to him than she had been to anyone in years. The thought made her chest tighten. Kale broke the silence. "You know, Lyra, storms like this don't happen often here. Sometimes you just have to stop and enjoy them." She gave him a sideways look. "Enjoy getting wet." He grinned. "Enjoy the fact that not everything in life is predictable." Her eyes lingered on him a moment longer than they should have. And she quickly looked away, but inside, something was shifting, something she wasn't ready to name. Yet, she didn't know it, but this storm would be remembered, not because of the rain, but because it was the first time she let herself wonder if maybe, just maybe, the human wasn't wrong about her. The rainstorm faded slowly, leaving the streets of Valoranine wet and shining under the dim evening lights. Lyra and Kale stepped out from under the awning, the air now cooler, carrying the fresh scent of water on dust. They walked without speaking for a while, their steps echoing softly on the metal walkways. Kale seemed deep in thought, his eyes distant. Lyra wondered if he regretted running into her again. Finally, he spoke. "You remind me of someone I once knew." Lyra glanced at him sharply. "Another alien." He shook his head. "A human woman, back on my home world." His voice had changed, slower, softer. "She thought she wasn't worth much. People told her she was too plain, too quiet, not the type men wanted to marry. She believed them for years." Lyra listened, unsure why his story felt strangely close to her own. One day, Kale continued, she met someone who saw her differently. Not for her clothes, not for her status, but for the way she saw the world. He told her she was worth more than she realized, and little by little, she began to believe him. And then? Lyra asked quietly. She became his wife. Kale said with a faint smile. They had a good life together. She laughed more, spoke more. She stood taller because she stopped carrying the weight of other people's lies. Lyra's throat felt tight. She didn't know why the story bothered her so much. It was just words. But the way Kale looked at her when he told it made her feel like he wasn't talking about that human woman at all. "You think that's me?" she asked after a moment. "You think I believe lies about myself?" Kale met her gaze. "I think you've been told the same story so many times, you started thinking it was the truth." She looked away quickly. "It's not the same, Kale. My people have rules, standards. They've decided I'm not fit to carry on my line. And they're right, no male wants a mate like me. That's because they're blind," he said firmly. "And I'm not." His certainty unsettled her. She had learned to live with the rejection, to make it a part of her. Now here was this human, tearing through it with a few sentences. They reached a small food stall, the kind that sold steaming bowls of spiced broth. Kale gestured toward it, hungry. She hesitated. "I shouldn't," he grinned. "It's not poisonous, I promise." Against her better judgment, she followed him. They sat at a corner table, the scent of the broth rising between them. Around them, the market was quieter now. Most vendors packing up for the night. For a while, they just ate. But Lyra kept stealing glances at him. Kale was different from any male she had ever met, alien or otherwise. He didn't try to impress her, didn't act like he was doing her a favor by sitting with her. He was simply there. Halfway through the meal, a shadow fell across their table. Two females from Lyra's clan stood there, their eyes sharp, their voices carried just enough to make sure others nearby could hear. "So this is where you've been," one said, "eating with a human. No wonder no one takes you seriously." "Lyra," the other laughed. "Does he even know? Does he know you're not breeding material?" The words hit like a blow to the gut. Lyra felt her face heat. She expected Kale to look away, maybe even stand and leave to avoid the embarrassment. Instead, he stood slowly, deliberately placing himself between her and the two females. His voice was calm, but hard as steel. "I don't care what you think she is or isn't, but I do know she's worth more than the two of you combined." The stall had gone quiet. All eyes on them. The females blinked. Clearly not used to being challenged. "You'll regret defending her." One hissed before they turned and walked away. Lyra sat frozen, her hands trembling under the table. No one had ever stood up for her like that, not in public, not against her own people. When Kale sat back down, he spoke lightly, as if nothing had happened. "You're stronger than you think, Lyra." She stared at him, her chest aching with something she couldn't name. "Why do you keep saying things like that?" "Because," he said simply, "one day, I want you to believe them, outside." The last of the market lights flickered off, but inside her, something new had just switched on. She didn't understand it yet. But she knew one thing: Kale wasn't done with her story, and neither was she. The next few days were tense. Word had spread through Lyra's district about the human who kept talking to her. Some called it strange, others called it shameful. And the cruelest voices said she was desperate, clinging to the only male who didn't know the truth about her. Lyra tried to ignore it. But the stares followed her everywhere. Even the workshop felt smaller, more suffocating. She began to wonder if Kale realized how much trouble he was causing just by being near her. It all came to a head at the central plaza. The plaza was where announcements were made and trade disputes were settled. That day, Lyra had gone there to deliver a repaired generator part. The air was thick with heat, and the sound of voices bouncing off the stone walls made her ears ring. She didn't see the trap until it closed around her. A group of her clan members stepped forward, blocking her path. There were 6 of them, for females. 2 males' faces she had known since childhood, none of them friendly. One of the older females sneered. "So, Lyra, tell us, is it true? Are you trying to make the human your mate?" The words hit like a strike, and the crowd began to gather, their eyes hungry for entertainment. "I don't have to answer you," Lyra said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Oh, but you do." Another female cut in. "You're making all of us look like fools, letting an off-worlder think you're something worth wanting." The laughter stung, sharp and loud. She could feel her hands shaking, and then, as if summoned, Kale's voice cut through the noise. "She is worth wanting." The crowd turned, and there he was, walking straight toward them, his jaw set, his eyes locked on the ones blocking Lyra's path. The nearest male stepped forward. "This doesn't concern you, human." "It concerns me when people I care about are treated like garbage," Kale said flatly. His voice carried easily, reaching the edges of the plaza. The laughter died, replaced by a tense silence. One of the females smirked. "Care about? Do you even know what she is? She's not breeding material, she's enough." Kale's voice cut sharp like a blade. "I don't care about your so-called standards. I care about her. And if you had half a brain, you'd see what I see." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lyra's heart pounded so hard, she thought everyone could hear it. The largest of the males stepped closer to Kale, his shadow falling over him. "Leave before we make you regret it." Kale didn't move. "I'm not going anywhere." He said, "You want to fight? Fine, but you'll have to go through me first." Lyra's breath caught. She had seen fights before, but this felt different. This was someone willing to take hits meant for her. The tension broke like a snapped cord. The male lunged forward, but Kale sidestepped, catching his arm and shoving him back. Gasps echoed through the plaza. A fight here was dangerous. Public brawls could lead to exile. "Stop it," Lyra shouted, stepping between them. Her voice cracked, but it carried enough force to make them hesitate. "This ends now," she said, looking from Kale to her clan members. "I'm not your shame, and I'm not your joke." The words surprised even her. Her chest felt light, her hands steady. She wasn't just defending Kale, she was defending herself. The older female clicked her tongue. "You've made your choice, Lyra. Don't come crawling back when he leaves you." With that, they turned and walked away, the crowd slowly dispersing. Leaving behind a buzzing tension in the air, Cale stepped closer, his voice low. "You didn't have to stand in front of him like that." "Yes, I did," she said, meeting his gaze. "You're not the only one who can protect someone." For a moment, they just looked at each other, the noise of the plaza fading into the background. "Lyra," Cale said softly, "I meant every word I said back there." Her heart tightened. She wanted to believe him more than anything, but a lifetime of rejection was hard to erase. Still, the way he looked at her made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over yet. But deep down, she knew something else: the confrontation in the plaza had made her a target. Her people would not let this go, and soon, she would have to make a choice that would change everything. The day after the confrontation in the plaza, Lyra's world grew quieter, too quiet. When she walked through the streets, her people no longer whispered. They simply stared at her with cold, closed expressions, as if she was already gone from them. Even the shopkeepers who had once greeted her with small nods now turned away. Refusing to meet her eyes, by mid-afternoon, 2 members of the clan council came to the workshop. Their presence made the air feel heavier. They stood tall, wearing the ceremonial sashes of authority, their faces carved with the same disapproval she had seen all her life. "Lyra," the elder male said, his voice clipped. "We've heard enough about your activities with the human. It must stop." Lyra put down the tool in her hand. "He's done nothing wrong. It's not about what he's done." The elder female snapped, "It's about you. Your behavior is a stain on the clan. You're already unfit, and now you've given our enemies a reason to laugh at us." Her jaw tightened. "So what is it you want from me?" "You will cut ties with the human immediately." The male said, "You will avoid him, speak no more to him, and show your loyalty to your people, or you will be banished." The words hung in the air like a sentence passed in court. Banishment was more than exile. It meant losing her home, her work, her right to return. It meant being nameless, wandering among strangers with no one to claim her. She swallowed hard. "And if I refuse?" The female elder's eyes were like stone. "Then you leave this city before the next moonrise, never return, and never speak our name again." They didn't wait for her answer. They simply turned and walked out, leaving her with the silence of the workshop and the pounding of her own heart. That evening, she sat in her small room, staring at the single window that looked out over the dim lights of the city. Her hands shook as she thought of what she would lose: everything she had built, the small routines that kept her grounded, even the streets she knew by heart. But then she thought of Cale. She remembered the way he had stepped between her and her clan in the plaza, the way he had said her name as if it meant something, the way he looked at her not as someone broken, but as someone whole. Her mind was a storm. When the night grew darker, she rose, grabbed her small travel bag, and began to pack. She didn't own much, just a few tools, a change of clothes, and a necklace her mother had given her before she died. Each item felt heavier than it should. By the time she finished, her choice was clear. She found Cale at the edge of the trade district, working on the side of his ship under a hanging light. He looked up when he saw her, his brows furrowing. "Lyra, what's wrong?" "I'm leaving," she said, the words falling heavy from her lips. He wiped his hands on a cloth. "Leaving? Why?" "The council gave me a choice: stay and never speak to you again, or go," she said quietly. "I chose to go." Cale stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head. "You didn't have to do that for me." "It wasn't just for you," she said, meeting his eyes. "It was for me too. I'm tired of living by their rules, tired of letting them decide who I am." Something in his expression softened. He stepped closer, his voice low. Then you're welcome on my ship, for as long as you want. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know where I'm going. We'll figure it out together, he said, without hesitation. The night air was cool as they loaded her bag into the small cargo hold. The hum of the ship's engine filled the silence. Lyra stood at the ramp for a moment, looking back. Toward the city, the lights seemed smaller now, distant. She wasn't sure if she felt free or terrified, but one thing was certain, there was no turning back. Kale appeared beside her. Ready? She nodded, stepping onto the ship. The door closed behind them with a quiet hiss, sealing her choice, sealing her future. As the ship lifted off, the city lights faded below, and the stars stretched out ahead. Lyra felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, but somewhere deep inside. She also felt the shadow of what was coming, because leaving her people behind didn't mean they were finished with her. The stars outside the ship's viewing window stretched into thin lines as Kale's vessel jumped into hyperspace. Lyra stood there, her hands resting lightly on the railing, staring at the endless galaxy ahead. She had left Valoranine behind, but the weight of her decision still sat in her chest. For a long time, neither she nor Kale spoke. The hum of the ship's engine filled the silence. Finally, Kale stepped beside her, holding 2 steaming cups. Here, he said, handing her one. It's not your people's tea, but it's warm. She took it carefully, the heat spreading through her fingers. Thank you, she murmured. Sipping the strange, slightly sweet drink, Kale leaned against the railing. How are you holding up? Lyra shrugged. I feel lighter, but also like I've stepped off a cliff and I'm still falling. He nodded. That's normal. Leaving everything you know behind is never easy. She turned her head to look at him. Why did you help me, Kale? From the very first day, you didn't even know me. He smiled faintly. I didn't need to know your whole story to see you were worth something. I've seen enough people broken down by lies. I wasn't about to watch it happen again. His words made her chest ache. She stared down into her cup. You say I'm beautiful like it's the most obvious thing in the world. But for me, it's still strange to hear. Kale's voice was quiet but firm. That's because you've been taught to measure yourself by their rules, not yours. He paused, looking out at the stars. You've already proven them wrong. Lyra, just by walking away, for the first time since leaving, she let herself smile, small, hesitant, but real. The days that followed were different from anything she had known. Kale didn't treat her like a burden. He showed her parts of the ship, taught her how to operate the navigation console, even asked her opinion when choosing trade routes. No one had ever valued her input before. One evening, as they landed on a small green world to trade supplies, Lyra noticed how the people there greeted her without judgment. No one whispered, no one laughed. They treated her like any other traveler. It was strange and freeing. Later, sitting by a campfire under the alien sky, she spoke softly. I keep waiting for someone to tell me I don't belong. Kale glanced at her from across the fire. You belong anywhere you choose to be. The simple truth. In his voice made her look down, hiding a smile that was stronger this time. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the weight of her past began to fade. The cruel words from her people no longer echoed as loudly in her mind. Instead, she heard Kale's voice, steady and sure, reminding her she was more than their judgment. One night, they stood together at the viewing deck again. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, a sea of stars glimmering in the dark. Lyra spoke first, her voice steady. When I was a child, I used to dream of leaving Valoranine. I thought if I could just get far enough away, I might feel different, but it wasn't distance I needed. It was someone to see me for who I am. Kale's eyes softened. And do you see it now? She took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. Yes, I do. A long silence settled between them, but it wasn't heavy. It felt warm. Like the quiet after a storm. He smiled at her. Good, because the way I see it, this is just the beginning. She turned back toward the stars, her heart steady. For the first time in years, she didn't know what planets they would see next, what dangers they might face, or how long this journey would last. But she knew one thing: she wasn't alone anymore. As the ship moved through the endless night, Lyra let herself imagine a future without limits, a life where she wasn't defined by anyone else's rules, and somewhere deep inside, she realized something else. Kale's words hadn't just changed her life. They had given her the courage to write the rest of her story herself. The human had been right all along.